Season 2 of The War Within has been fairly unique in that two different metas have formed for the top level of Mythic Plus. If you yourself played this season, you'll have noticed many keys at the 18 and above level have been advertising for a physical comp, usually some combination of monk, warrior, druid, shaman, and then X. Or the more popular, but I'd say trickier to pull off, magic comp, which is comprised of Vengeance, Demon Hunter, Arcane Mage, Balanced Druid, Disc Priest, and Unholy DK. In this video, I want to talk about the pros and cons of the physical magic meta, which I'm gonna from now on call the split meta, and whether or not Blizzard should look to continue this into the new season and beyond. So how do the two different metas work? Well, the magic comp is comprised of Vengeance Demon Hunter, which brings a magic amp for the group, as well as heavy group utility, which frees up the casters to DPS, generally. The DH chains grips mobs together, which allows for the Balanced Druid to beam to AoE silence everything, freeing up the team to cleave through the packs of mobs undisturbed. Balance also brings Mark of the Wild, blanket AoE, and some solid burst single target, as well as a battle res. Arcane brings the Arcane Intellect, Bloodlust and Heroism, and is an incredible single-target funnel machine. You may notice in Cinderbrew Meadery, for example, your Arcane Mage dying about 12 seconds into the first pull of the dungeon. That's because they've smashed a hide muscle so hard that your Vengeance is now scrambling for threat. Which brings me to the Disc Priest. Disc is a great healer, it brings stamina buff, or fortitude, and shields for the squishier DPS specs, particularly Mage and Balance. I found I generally avoid Resto Shaman healers in a magic comp because I knew it meant spending 50% of the dungeon as a bear, whereas when playing with the Disc Priest, I had to do that way less often. Lastly, Unholy DK brings fantastic AoE, high self-sustainability, as well as group defensive utility with things like AMZ, and also you can utilize DK in, say, Rookery Second Boss, where you can AMS and negate one of the core boss dot mechanics, saving group defensives and valuable DPSing time. A lot of DK's damage also scales off of magic amp, so that means that it's going to fit very nicely into a magic comp and retain the benefits. As you can tell from this breakdown, the magic comp is very specifically finely tuned around everyone playing their role very carefully. And I've noticed that in pugs, at times, it can be more challenging to pull off. The physical comp, however, has more freedom. You can play Guardian Druid, Prot Warrior, or more commonly, Brewmaster Monk. And I think this logic comes down to how best to fit all of your buffs as optimally as possible. And I believe Brew is considered the strongest tank of the three at the moment. Brew also provides the Mystic Touch buff, increasing physical damage for the team. You can then fill in with Arms Warrior generally, which brings attack power, okay target capped AoE, but strong single target. It's most valued, I'd say, in Rookery Last Boss because of the high uptime in the execute window. Resto Shaman's going to bring your Bloodlust, Mastery buff, and overall is a very strong healer right now, and it can technically even be played in the Magic comp, but generally it isn't as popular as Priest. Feral Druid's then going to bring your Mark of the Wild, your Combat Res, very important for that, great AoE, great funnel, and single target. Your final DPS spot is then open to a few different specs. Outlaw Rogue best suits, as it's all physical damage, brings great AoE, but I don't think it brings much funnel. It also brings Shroud, which facilitates skips that would normally be covered by Vengeance, Demon Hunter, Sigil, and Night Elf Shadow Meld. Though this slot could be filled by any physical damage spec in theory, Hunter is another great option, Marksmanship Hunter to be specific. The magic comp relies heavily on specific utility and pulls around this. It's not very adjustable. The physical meta, however, plays like a traditional key comp. Pull a few packs, assign key kick targets, cycle utility, and just pump. People meme about physical comp meta just being press W. Because in general, if you pull small and just have high damage, you'll time the key. Funnily enough, I personally found the magic method to be less successful in pugs because of the precise coordination. However, in a highly coordinated, high-level group, I could see this being far superior. The magic meta was rapidly established and became very sought after for most of the season. You can see in the statistics that most groups opted for this composition. It was only later in the season, particularly during the MDI, where Squish Vegan's group popularized the growing presence of a physical meta. It was there, it just wasn't very popular yet. As someone that achieved an average of 3800 IO in both physical and magic meta this season, I want to explore the pros and cons of these two different metas and whether it's a good idea for Blizzard to ensure a split meta stays consistent leading into Season 3 and beyond, or if there are some better alternatives. Now, I'm going to Gamescom later this month, invited over by Blizzard, where I'll hopefully have an interview with the devs. I plan on asking them about exactly this topic and whether they prefer this level of freedom or restriction, depending on how you look at it. I'd also like to caveat this video and mention that it's important to understand that this meta split only becomes relevant and encouraged when you're pushing the highest level of keys. And by that, I mean literally 18 plus? From my experience running lower level dungeons on alts, it appeared that this meta split wasn't anywhere near as relevant, and I found just scrolling LFG that comps are quite a mishmash. I actually wouldn't encourage you to play the magic comp in, say, a +8 or a +10, because first of all, no one's going to know what their specific role is, and B, some of these specs need a lot of ramp time. At the lower key level, you're way better just picking the best player that you can find, the person with the most gear, and the most IO, probably the best one. And actually, the optimal meta for lower keys is going to look very different from the optimal meta for a +20 key, and I don't think enough people consider that. I'll also be assessing pros and cons of a split meta compared to a single BIS meta, which traditionally we see more of. And remember, it's important to play whatever you enjoy most. If we push this mantra long and hard enough, it's bound to catch on eventually. So the pros then of the split meta is that it's easy to understand and cater to. The player base knows where they're at and can level and gear characters accordingly. If you know you play Magic, you're bound to find many groups looking specifically for your spec. And specifically in the Magic meta, I found that your gameplay is dictated by the spec you're playing. E.g., as balanced, you end up learning your beam timings and your role of blanket AoE. So you can become very comfortable in what your job is in that group comp. If you change different group comps, then your job might be a little bit different, or you might need to adjust on the fly. And you can also consider Arcane Mage, where you learn to focus down a primary target in every group comp that you're in. This helps establish consistent routes, pulls, and player expectations are met. It's great for consistent IO gains in a predominantly pre-made environment. It improves engagement. More specs become sought after. I hate the word viable, personally, but yes, more specs become viable, which means more people receive a positive experience in Mythic Plus being able to play their main, and it also feels great to be maximally empowered by your group comp, because let's be honest, when you're playing Mythic Plus, everybody just wants to max out their DPS, and if you're getting all of your group buffs, then you're going to feel at your best. And even if you deplete, well hey, at least you got to pump, right? Now I'm going to touch back on this point a little bit later, because while we do see improved engagement in some ways, we also actually see a diminishing of engagement in others. I'll save that for the cons. You also get variety multiplied. While the core of both comps is set, there is still some freedom to make changes, i.e. bringing a rogue instead of a windwalker. You might lose a buff, but you gain Shroud. I've also seen Warlocks and Devvokers taken in a Magic comp over potentially the Arcane or the Unholy. Warlock, for example, is incredibly powerful in Floodgate, a dungeon which is going to be retained for Season 3. Yes, some of the mobs and routing has been changed by Blizzard, but Warlock gateways in that dungeon are fantastic for skipping a lot of annoying trash or helping for better Bloodlust timings and routing in general. Now, these are just some of the pros of having a split meta. I'm sure there are many others, and I would love for you guys to comment below what you found with the pros of a split Magic physical meta. What's your season been like? Now, looking at the cons, it potentially encourages Blizzard's complacency. What if you're not meta for either comp? You're fully in the weeds for a whole season. This is a problem irregardless of the split meta. However, when there's only one BIS meta, it's likely Blizzard will step in and encourage diversity. We can see that historically, where Blizzard will try and do some balance tuning so that we don't just have one majorly dominant comp for the whole 6 months of a season. However, Blizzard may see the existence of a split meta physical magic as enough variety that they don't need to make changes. This is bad for the non-meta specs at the higher level, and this is to note, it's only at the really high level that this is relevant, and if you look at the statistics, there's not that many people that are pushing keys at the 18 and above level. Another con are raid buffs. I found this season more than any other that it was expected that one of these two comps would be available. And because of group buffs, it feels really bad to deviate from these metas. While you can deviate and substitute certain specs, you ideally didn't want to. I found that meant that there are now 2 restrictive metas, not 1. Imagine a comp where you play, let's say, Prot Paladin, Frost DK, Survival Hunter, Fire Mage, and Mistweaver. If you're the Fire Mage here, you know you could be in a full magic comp, massively amping your DPS. And generally, you're not getting a group comp that's really going to gel well together. Now, you'll still potentially be timing keys, depending on the level that you're trying to do and the caliber of the players, but it is going to be that much harder. We can also consider another example of Balanced Druid becoming almost unplayable without full magic amp and a priest babysitting it defensively. It feels really rough. And then if you're a Balanced Druid main, you say, well, my spec actually isn't that strong right now, it's just very highly specifically suited for an environment that you're not always guaranteed to get. So how does that then affect the tuning of these specs? You say, well, my spec might be OP in this specific composition, but outside of that composition, I'm doing tank damage. And for I think many people, it doesn't feel good when your spec is reliant on the composition you're in order to do well. Again, this is just a short list of some of the cons that I've thought about, but of course comment below if you guys have your own cons, and I'd love to hear them. So, what are some alternatives? Well, I think the gold standard is Season 1 of Dragonflight. That meta where so many specs were well tuned that you could literally play anything. This is the gold standard of Mythic Plus balance, and what Blizzard should be aiming for every single season. I actually can't quite remember if it was Season 1 where Orgvoker eventually got added in and completely destroyed everything. Obviously, before that, it was really great to play that season where you could kind of build a comp around anything and do well. Now, yes, did we still have raid buffs then? We did. But things change, people get more well-versed in designing comps around these things and realizing their value and understanding their value, and obviously the tuning of these specs has not stayed the same. So as an alternative, I'm suggesting Blizzard just does more balancing, ? We know in general that Blizzard seems to be tuning for Raid, not Mythic Plus, but it would be really nice to see more Mythic Plus tuning. And there's various different ways that you could do that. You could even have key items from Mythic Plus which specifically amplify certain parts of your damage, your talents, whatever it may be, while in Mythic Plus, without it then affecting Raid. Not necessarily a Mythic Plus tier set, but something akin to that. You can also get rid of Raid buffs or reintroduce the buff scrolls that used to exist. That way, BIS damage, utility, and survivability are selected for instead of designing around a specific composition. This also highlights bringing the player, which ultimately is what we should be doing in the game. It doesn't feel great when you're a solid player and you know your spec very well and you know that you're going to perform, but unfortunately you don't fit into the group comp, and so sorry, we can't play with you today, Billy. We're going to bring this complete unknown guy that we've never played with before because he gives us 4% DPS. Sorry, Billy. I know that you were my best man at the... I know you were the best man at my wedding, but I'm gonna have to bench you. It doesn't feel good. Now, a final alternative is to stop pushing keys. What's the point? If you go above a +10, you're just doing it for ego anyway. So in all seriousness, these are a couple of alternatives. I'm sure there are others. I thought this was a fun video to revise the physical magic meta that we've had this season. Overall for me, I've had a really fun season. I hit 3860 as Feral and 3750 as Balanced Druid. So I've been able to experience both metas that we currently have, and I found a lot of enjoyment and satisfaction from both. Feral is obviously my main, so I was more comfortable going into that physical meta, but I was also doing the higher keys as Feral. For Balance Druid, I was still attempting some plus 20s and whatnot, and it was very fun to improve my skills, learning how to play ranged optimally in Mythic Plus, and also understanding my role in the group as being the beambot. I'm sure I can make a separate video if you guys want, where I talk about the pros and cons that I've personally felt playing Feral, playing Balance, what I learned, and my major takeaways. If you want that, comment down below, I'd be happy to make it, as I think it's quite rare for people to actually play Feral and Balance compared to if you're a Warlock or a Mage, you play every single DPS spec because it's pretty similar. If you play Rogue or something like that, then you play every Rogue spec. So yeah, let me know if you guys want to see that from me, and I'll happily make it. I hope this has been a fun little video for you guys to watch. Please comment down below. I'm very interested in your opinions on this split meta and what you want to see going forward. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again.